welcome back to the JFK Assassination Audit. This is going to be number 26, and it's now 18 December, and we're going to go over a couple of different things here, of course for the timeline, but I'm also going to get into this Des Moines Shield video here. But let's see, again we're going to take a look at the firing of a Mannlicher Carcano, or Carcano, whatever you want to call it, rifle, and this is a short little quick video. I just want to show it because of the action.
A little bit of echo.
What is it, a 6.5
Carcano.
6.5 Carcano. The bullet that supposedly hit anybody in Dealey Plaza. It's a rather unusual round. And this is referred to as one of the worst rifles in the world.
Or second worst.
Or second worst. And you'll be able to hear it.
You hit that one. There
we go.
Getting the rounds into the magazine and the magazine into the gun.
You see that right there, that action? Hold on. Just back up a little bit. You see how you've got to put your fingers on top of the cartridge clip and then push it down in there. Again, there's no way that Oswald would have been able to do that and not leave fingerprints. Pretty obvious.
And the magazine into the gun were nothing short of a nightmare. Just imagine trying to use this in battle.
All right. Here we go. No, yeah, you got a baby in it.
Again, notice the fingers. You see that? You see the fingers on the finger, the trigger? There's no way Oswald could have not left any fingerprints whatsoever.
At this point, you'll hear a sound that indicates you're...
You see how he has to grab on to the stock there and push in and hold it when he's, clicking the bolt back? Because if you didn't, you'd lose control of the rifle. So again, when you're pushing into the stock like that with your fingers, you're going to leave fingerprints.
Time is up. A misfire.
Wow, there's a misfire. You see that right there? You see how he has to put his thumb over the top of the stock and push down with his fingers and his thumb to pull that bolt back? Again, you're applying pressure into the wood with oil on your fingers. You're going to leave your fingerprints.
Although this firearm has been thoroughly cleaned, it still presents major problems. Paradoxically, when it does fire, it's surprisingly accurate.
Anyway, that's a quick little video there. Let's go into this next one.
Hi there, guys.
A little bit of echo.
Today is the 50th anniversary of the assassination of American President
The bullet that supposedly hit anybody.
Kennedy. So what better excuse could I have to take my Carcano M9138 out for a bit of a test drive? Unfortunately, I don't have a bunch of this Winchester Western ammunition to shoot, but I do have some reloads with Hornady bullets. As you can see, the Carcano takes the 6-round end block type clip. So we're going to give this thing a go. Let's have a look at the loading system used for the...
Again, it's interesting that Oswald didn't put in the full 6 rounds into the clip, because you saw how that clip went in there. It would be really difficult to push the 4 rounds, just 4 rounds in the clip. It would be off a little bit to put that into the Carcano. You're going to want a full clip so you can push that down into the clip, but yet Oswald's gun only had 4 rounds in the clip.
The Carcano, as I mentioned, it uses these 6-shot end block clips, which are necessary if you want to use the magazine on the Carcano. Open the bolt. So to load the Carcano, the entire charger or clip.
You see that? He's having to use 2 thumbs to push that down in there. Let's back up a little bit. You see that thumb right there? You're going to get a perfect partial thumbprint right on that casing. There's just no way, unless Oswald was using gloves, okay, there's no way Oswald could have pushed those 4 rounds, and it would have been off. It would have been difficult to push that clip with just 4 rounds into the Carcano there, okay, into the magazine. Very difficult. And again, you see the position of the thumb. It's just impossible not to leave any kind of thumbprint. And then just with this 6 rounds is hard enough. Look what he has to do.
Clip
he has to use 2 thumbs to push this into there. So you can imagine with just 4 rounds, it would be more difficult.
Inserted into the magazine until it latches.
You see?
And then the top edge of the charger acts as the feed lips for the magazine.
And then you get a good palm print on that bolt right there, the bolt handle.
There are a lot of people who think that the Carcano is clunky and slow to operate. So let's see how slow and clunky it is to operate.
Now see, look, he's using a rest. You know, maybe Oswald was using a bolt, a box, but it'd be very difficult to use that as a box inside the window, okay? And you notice the finger positions. You see the thumb? There's the finger right on the trigger, and then you've got these fingers in this little groove here, so you're going to have fingerprints all on the groove. And then we're going to watch, hopefully we'll get some smoke. Hold on one second. I want to see, so you can see the smoke blow back into, with the nitrates there. You see that? This is going too fast to see the smoke coming up. It's when the smoke comes out here, because when something explodes, unless it's controlled, it's going to go in all directions, okay? And in a rifle, it's controlled with a barrel, and so it's going to come out of every single open area, which will be here and here. You can't get around that. So the nitrates would blow off here into Oswald's face, onto his cheek, into his hair, onto his jacket. You can't get around it. You see that action? There's no way Oswald's finger and palm prints couldn't be on that handle. And there we are again. So he's got his thumb on the stock there. He's got his finger on the guard, or finger on the trigger, and then his fingers again on this little trench. Did you see that? You see that smoke right there? You can't get away from that. That's nitrates, gunpowder residue and nitrates. That's going to blow back. You see it's blowing back in high up here. It's going to be in Oswald's hair. It's going to be on his hand. It's going to be, I mean, it's going to be all over him. But yet Oswald had nothing on his face. Impossible. Even if you wash your face. You see? And there goes the round. Let's watch it again. You see it? You see that smoke? That's nitrate. It's gunpowder residue. As the gunpowder burns up, it's going to go out of the gaps. See, in this bolt here, there are little metal gaps. You can't completely close it because they've got to move. So there's going to be little gaps, and then the gunpowder residue is going to force through, because it's a gas, okay, it's going to force its way through those cracks because of the explosion and go that way. You can't get around it. Almost impossible for Oswald to have fired that rifle and not have any gunpowder residue on him. Nitrates, basically. Let's see if he does another one. And see, look, he's having problems with the trying to push that bolt forward. So you can still see, look at that, you can still see the gas, the nitrate gunpowder burn coming out of that bolt. And all that's gonna, if you're in a window, the wind's gonna be pushing in on you and blowing that back onto your face, your hair, every part of your body. See a little bit of the smoke coming out there, and see, look, he's putting his thumb to hold on to that rifle. You got to secure the front or the center part of the rifle. He's pushing his thumb down into it. You can't see his fingers pushing into it to hold that rifle steady when you pull that bolt back. Okay. Anyway, that's enough of that. Let's see if he does. Let's see here. See these little grooves right here? This is where your fingers would go in. There's no way you couldn't leave your fingerprints. Okay? You got a thumbprint, it's going to be on the stock there. Fingerprint's going to be on the trigger. It's just impossible not to leave fingerprints unless you're wearing gloves. And then when you're wearing gloves, it makes it more difficult to fire. And then not one witness said they saw the guy wearing gloves. Okay? They could tell you what his color of his hair looked like. They could tell you the color of his shirt. They could tell you that the rifle had a scope, but not one of them saw gloves. Okay? Anyways, we'll keep going. Now, yesterday we were talking about documents, that they're going to release documents, and again, I'm of the position that any incriminating documents, the CIA, first of all, they wouldn't have created documents saying, oh, on this date we're going to go, all of us, you, me, you, and him, listing the people are going to go to Dealey Plaza at this date, this time, and we're going to kill the president. Nobody would have written a memo like that. Nothing. But like my foundation story about the house burning down and there's a foundation left, there's going to be other incriminating documents. There's going to be travel documents. There's going to be other things. And again, like I said, the official CIA, the official FBI, and Secret Service were not involved in the assassination. There were rogue right-wing elements of all those groups involved in the assassination. And they're not going to be sending out documents so their supervisor can see that, okay? So a lot of those documents don't exist. Any documents that did exist would have been destroyed and incinerated, okay? And then when the official guys above them started inquiring, did we have anything to do with this? Did any of our guys do this? They would have covered it up because all the blame's been put on Oswald, so they're going to cover it up in order not to have a shakedown, have budgets cut, have other inquiries, prosecutions, things like that, okay? So they would have destroyed those documents long ago. Everyone knows I mean, I was in the military, and we had a shredder, and we had an incinerator. Of course, I was never to shred or incinerate any documents on my own, but believe me, I definitely did just innocuous documents that had nothing to do with really anything serious, okay? But it listed like names and dates and stuff like that of people in our unit, and you didn't want to just throw this in the trash so any asshole could go rummaging through our dumpster later on or at some landfill, okay? So, you know, upon orders, I would shred documents and then we would incinerate them. That was kind of a process that we learned. You shred the documents and then you incinerate it, because if you don't shred it before, it makes it harder to burn it, okay? And then I believe later on they even came out with a shredder burner that did the shredding and burning at the same time. Back then we had a shredder and we had a burner. We had not a burner, we put it in, we took it to a section in a box or bags, and then there was a unit in our military unit that would burn those documents, okay, in their own base incinerator. But my whole point is, the government, any of these agencies, if they did find any documents that were incriminating to them, would have burned them, shredded them long ago, okay? And the reason I'm going to mention this about the Iranian embassy is because the reason, not saying that I agree with this Iran or the Iranian students, the reason the Iranian students stormed the embassy is because they knew that, you know, if they had just blockaded the embassy, and they also had people working inside the embassy, that the government or the government employees in there, especially those involved with the CIA, were burning documents, destroying documents, incriminating our help to the Shah of Iran and training of the secret police and other incriminating things like that. Okay, so the reason they stormed the embassy is because they had gotten word from workers, secretaries. You know, every embassy around the world hires local workers to work, you know, maybe the front office. I remember when I was in Israel, I went to the U.S. embassy and there was like an Irish lady there, and I'm like, how the hell do you get a job from Ireland working in the U.S. embassy in Tel Aviv? And she was most uncooperative, actually. And but anyway, so the Iranian secretaries, whatever, inside the embassy, you know, not all of them, but some of them were sympathetic to what was going on with the revolution. And it was a time of chaos in the Iranian revolution. We're talking only less than, you know, a little bit over 6 months after the Shah left. So no one was, you know, the Khomeini was mainly in charge, but wasn't totally in charge. There were lots of different groups and factions fighting over each other, okay? But, so the Shah had fled to the United States. The Iranians wanted him back. They wanted the money. They wanted, you know, the bank accounts. They wanted, you know, to put him on trial and all these kinds of things. And the U.S. was giving him medical treatment, allowing him to be in the U.S. for medical treatment. I think eventually he left and went to Egypt or something like that. But, so the Iranians wanted to have leverage over the U.S., so they took the embassy mainly to get the documents, but they also took the hostages. And I totally disagree with that. And, you know, I was not a big fan of Iran at the time. Matter of fact, when in 1984, when my friends and I took a senior trip to Washington, D.C., we went up Embassy Road, which is Massachusetts Avenue, and you go by the old closed Iranian embassy here. It didn't look like as nice as this back then. It was 1984, would have been, what, just 3 years after they released the hostages. So it was all boarded up. The windows were boarded up because people were vandalizing the building. There was writing on the side of the Iranian embassy, and, you know, there was no cameras around, no police around, nothing. So we all went up these stairs, you know, went up to the front door and had one guy as lookout, and we all, you know, unzipped our pants and peed on the front fucking door of the Iranian embassy. Get a big fuck you, you know. And we laughed about it because, you know, we're 17, 18-year-old kids, you know, what are you going to do? But that's what we did. because that's the way we felt about Iran at the time. You know, they took these diplomats hostages, which is not supposed to be done. They weren't, you know, soldiers or anything like that. And but anyway, so they were burning documents, and this is why the Iranians stormed the embassy.
Of the Islamic Revolution, tense relations between the United States and Iran came to a head one autumn day in November 1979. Iran angry over the U.S. interference in its affairs, and emotions reached a boiling point after Iran's Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi had been overthrown, and the U.S. took him in for cancer treatment after he fled the country.
And again, let's not forget that Reza Pahlavi was installed and supported by the CIA back in the 1950s because the British, the Anglo petroleum companies mostly controlled the oil in Iran, and the current Shah and president, I believe it was President Mossadegh, wanted to nationalize it, get their own oil resources back, okay? Because the oil was being pumped out of the ground. They had Iranian workers, but all the profits from the oil, you know, minus a little bit of tax, was going to, you know, this Anglo-Iranian oil company, okay? And, you know, right or wrong, Mossadegh didn't think that was right and wanted to nationalize it. So Mossadegh, they had student riots. They went in, they started throwing out and attacking the Anglo Oil Petroleum Company's offices. The CIA, you know, they had their own Iranian military people on the payroll. They paid. They suppressed the revolt. They arrested Mossadegh and they installed Pahlavi, okay, back in the 50s. So he was in power for like 20-something years, and they supported him to, you know, keep a lid on the Iranian revolutionaries and let the oil company do its business and take the profits and things like that. Right or wrong, I'm not saying on one side or the other, but that was how he got into power. And then he was so oppressive, and that eventually, you know, the revolution happened, and Khomeini came in, which has made it even worse. You know, there's nothing good about the Iranian regime right now today, okay? But this is how it happened, because like I said, there's this very, very close relationship between the CIA and the oil companies, okay? H.L. Hunt, you know, DeMornschild, all these people we're going to go over, very, very close relationship. They walk hand in hand together, okay? And they help each other out.
After several protests, November 4th, 1979, a day that would change history forever, when Islamist students entered the U.S. Embassy in Iran, taking 52 Americans as hostage for 444 days. More drama would follow, including President Jimmy Carter expelling Iranian diplomats and carrying out a rescue mission, which failed. The diplomats were eventually freed on Carter's last day as president, but it would all cause decades of tension as the Islamic takeover of the country turned Iran from an ally of the U.S. into one of its worst enemies. Animosity which continues to this day as Iran becomes a regional power. And now, one of the Iranian student leaders behind the seizure of the U.S. Embassy in 1979 is speaking out, saying he regrets the attack.
Obviously, if I go back in time to that day, while having my present information and having seen the result of our actions, I would definitely not do it again.
The students realizing that Americans wouldn't send the Shah back to stand trial.
A few months after the takeover, it appeared to be turning into a rotten fruit hanging down from a tree, and no one had the courage to take it down and resolve the matter.
And the events still impacting the relationship between both countries, as Iran marking the 40th anniversary of the seizure of the U.S. Embassy and the hostage crisis with a rally in front of the diplomatic compound.
I'm sure there are a lot of people who suffer because of the sanctions. If people want to, if countries, they want to kill each other, they kill each other, but ordinary people should not suffer. the inflation, the sanctions, everything is affecting all the people every day.
Anyway, that's a good little thing there. And let's see, one last thing here. Okay, we got that one. Alright, so we're going to continue with Des Moines Shield. What we're going to do is I'm going to go over all these people here, spend a few minutes every time we watch this video, and let you just give you an explanation or an example of, you know, who this Des Moines Shield really is, okay? The guy that took, you know, Oswald under his wing, this rich, right-wing, anti-communist Russian that took in this Marxist communist revolutionary, okay? Anyway, let's see. Lee Harvey Oswald and his Russian-born wife, Marina Oswald, were introduced to Des Moines Shield in the summer of 1962 in Fort Worth, Texas. Des Moines Shield testified before the Warren Commission in 1964. He met the Oswalds through a prominent member of the Fort Worth Russian-American community, oil accountant George Bohe. Okay. When Des Moines Shield asked whether it was safe to help Oswald, Bohe said that he checked with the FBI. Des Moines Shield also believed that he had discussed Oswald with Max Clark, whom he believed worked for the FBI, and that J. Walton Moore, whom Des Moines Shield described as a government man, either FBI or Central Intelligence, and who debriefed Des Moines Shield several times following the travel starting in 1957. According to a declassified document obtained by the House Select Committee on Assassination, Des Moines Shield was in fact correct, and J. Walton Moore was an agent of the CIA's Domestic Contact Division in Dallas. Now, a lot of people don't understand this, and like I was talking about yesterday, is that the CIA puts out feelers to people that travel around the world and go into other countries, especially countries they're interested in, okay? So, for example, today, you know, the CIA would be in contact with Microsoft, Facebook, Google executives that, you know, often travel to China or to Russia and things like that to handle their divisions over there. And, you know, report back what they've observed. You know, is there fighting on the street? Is there, are the, you know, are people in shambles? Is there food on the shelves in the grocery store? You know, things like this. Is there gas prices, you know, skyrocketing? There's a lot of crime. Things like this. They're going to report back what they observe. And it doesn't mean they're agents of the CIA, trained agents. It just means that they're another source of information to the CIA. And this is what Des Moines Shield was. He wasn't a trained agent of the CIA. He just went to all these different countries that the CIA just happened to be interested in. And Venezuela, South America, Cuba, Haiti, you know, Central America, Mexico, all these places, Russia, Yugoslavia. So he would be definitely a person the CIA would be contacting. So he got in contact with his sources in the CIA and the FBI, and, you know, hey, is this Oswald okay? And he was reported back that Oswald seemed okay. Now, don't you think that if the FBI or the CIA was in any way, you know, red flagging Oswald as this violent, crazy, lunatic, you know, threatening to assassinate people, that they would have warned Des Moines Shield to stay away from him? Again, same thing with the white Russian community in Dallas. Don't you think that all these anti-communist, virulently anti-communist right-wing people in the Russian community, who's, you know, probably still had relatives in the gulags in 1963 in Russia or Soviet Union, don't you think that if they thought for a minute that Oswald was a real communist, a real traitor, would have turned him in, would have run for the hills, would have had nothing to do with him? Okay? But then we're going to see where Oswald's at parties singing and dancing with these Russians, and no one's batting an eye like it's a normal thing. Okay? It's just something very strange going on. It says, during this period, tens of thousands of American citizens were routinely debriefed by the CIA after traveling to communist countries such as Yugoslavia, as de Mohrenschildt did. After returning home from a weekend trip to Houston, de Mohrenschildt became aware that someone had broken into his home and copied his personal papers and other documents. At that time, he'd also had a manuscript that Oswald had given him to read, and realized that the document might also have been photocopied in the search. His primary concern was that the CIA was behind the break-in. According to de Mohrenschildt, Moore flatly denied when confronted that the CIA was involved in any way. And again, you know, if you're the CIA, you're not going to send trained CIA agents out to de Mohrenschildt's house to break in. You're going to pay some, you know, burglar who's in prison or just getting out of prison or just getting out of jail or facing charges. You're going to say, hey, well, you can work out some time if you do a good deed for your government. We'll give you some money. You can keep whatever you find of value. And go break into de Mohrenschildt's house, make us copies of things, take photos, and we're particularly interested in this, but if you find anything of value, you're welcome to keep it, like that. In October of 1962, Oswald informed de Mohrenschildt that he had lost his job in nearby Fort Worth. In response, de Mohrenschildt advised Oswald that he would have a better chance of finding work in Dallas. Oswald was soon hired by the Dallas photographic firm Jaeger Child Stovall, their, you know, government defense contractor. De Mohrenschildt's wife and daughter would later say that it had been he who had secured the job at Jaeger Child's Stovall for Oswald. So again, if Oswald was this crazed, you know, revolutionary communist, do you think that Jaeger Childs would have risked his reputation by getting this crazed communist a job, you know, with a government defense contractor? I don't think so. It says, on April 14th, 1963, de Mohrenschildt and his wife visited Oswald's apartment. As Marina was showing Jean around the apartment, they discovered Oswald's rifle leaning against the wall inside a closet. Jean told George that Oswald had a rifle, and George joked to Oswald, "Were you the one who took the pot shot at General Walker?" General Edwin Walker was an ultra-conservative politician whom de Mohrenschildt knew that Oswald disliked. So, here's the thing. You know, in the South, it's not uncommon for people to have a rifle, to go hunting, or have any kind of weapon in the house. Matter of fact, I doubt that if you did a survey, if you went around and knocked on 100 doors, okay, and went through 100 doors of people in Dallas, I doubt you'd maybe find one that didn't have a gun inside the house, okay? So, to see a weapon in Oswald's closet in Dallas, not very unusual, okay? So, you know, in the comment about General Walker, again, if Oswald is doing an assignment, you know, and the thing, you got to look at it like this, for General Walker was getting ready to run for president in 1964, okay? So basically he had been fired, put in a mental institution, and just forgot about and laughed about, and so he was trying to build up, you know, a reputation as an anti-communist. He's trying to build up, you know, that he's out there risking his life for the American people. So it makes sense to me that the right-wing community would, you know, hey, Oswald, this is your assignment. We want you to go down and take a pot shot at General Walker. Don't hit him, okay? But so that'll get him in the news, get him some sympathy, and then, you know, Walker knows that you're going to be there, okay? And then what you're going to do is when you come back, you're going to fake this to your wife, tell her, because you know, and we know, that she's writing letters back to family and her boyfriend, you know, in Russia, and that the Russians, the Soviets, are opening her mail, and they're going to see that you took a shot at General Walker. And like I said, General Walker was the most feared general and hated general among the Soviet Union and the Eastern Bloc. They thought he was crazy, okay? So that would help to develop Oswald's legend and bona fides as being, on their side, being a revolutionary, and therefore they would let the guard down and let Oswald possibly infiltrate one of their clandestine groups inside the United States. Just a supposition. I don't know anything for sure. Anyway, it says, in an interview with Edward J. Epstein, de Mohrenschildt claimed to have told the CIA that he believed Oswald had attempted to murder General Walker. I spoke to the CIA both before and afterwards. It was what ruined me. So, if he talked to the CIA right after it happened, why is he joking about it with Oswald? Anyway, the Warren Commission concluded on April 10, 1963, Oswald had attempted to kill General Walker. In June 1963, de Mohrenschildt moved to Haiti. He never saw Oswald again. After the Kennedy assassination was assassinated on November 22nd, de Mohrenschildt testified before the Warren Commission in April 1964. According to Colonel L. Fletcher Prouty, then Chief Pentagon to CIA Liaison Officer, de Mohrenschildt also had several private lunches with former Director and Warren Commission member Alan Dulles while testifying. So, de Mohrenschildt wasn't just your average domestic contact. If he's having lunches with Alan Dulles, the former head of the CIA who was fired by Kennedy, okay? So, and I guess you could look at it like this, okay? You got Oswald comes back from Russia. They're, watching him. They're watching Kennedy. They're looking for, like I said, they're not going to hire people that are sane and don't have, damage, don't have things not right about them. They want people working for them that they can control. They have criminal records, they're mentally unstable, things like that. So they're looking at Oswald to possibly use in other, right-wing things. Taking a pot shot at General Walker, infiltrating communist groups, things like that. And then they realize by the summer of 1963 that Oswald would be the perfect patsy. We're going to kill Kennedy, okay, but Oswald's going to be the perfect patsy for that. So now we need to set that up where Oswald is back in Dallas, okay, and like that. So they've got de Mohrenschildt as his handler. They're going to keep a watch out for him, okay? And it wasn't just him either. There were other people they were watching too. There were other plots, other crazed ex-service members. Even, Richard Nagel was one of those guys. All right, so it says, I'm going to wrap this up here and get into the video. After Kennedy was assassinated, let's see, in November 1966, de Mohrenschildt left Haiti and returned to Dallas. During 1967, Orleans Parish District Attorney Jim Garrison interviewed de Mohrenschildt and his wife as part of a Garrison prosecution of Clay Shaw. Garrison said that both the de Mohrenschilds insisted Oswald had been scapegoat in the assassination. Garrison concluded with his conversation with George de Mohrenschildt had been Oswald's unwitting babysitter assigned to protect otherwise see the general welfare of Oswald. Again, you got this wealthy guy that's hanging out with the richest men in the country, in the world, but yet he seems to find time, and we're going to go into this in the video, to spend all this time with this loser, crazy, communist revolutionary loser, okay, just because he spoke Russian and had lived in Minsk, where de Mohrenschildt had been. Alright, so now we're going to go into the video, and this video is amazing. I don't know exactly when this video was made. I'm assuming it was for 1977, because that's when de Mohrenschildt shot himself, okay? and we'll go into that. Alright, so this is Des Moines Shield. You see he's a very sophisticated man dressing in suits and ties. There's his wife. She's a former actress, Russian, also raised in China. The reason she was raised in China is because her family was, you know, czarists. People that supported the czar were kicked out, and so they came as political refugees to China. Alright, here we go.
General, the counsel for the Warren Committee is a very clever lawyer. And
and also I wanted to properly give credit for this. This is a video that Dennis Morissette put up. I don't know where he got it. I don't know how old this is. But this is George de Mohrenschildt interviewed by Willem Altmans. And so Willem Altmans, I'm not really sure who he is, but he sounds like he's pretty good friends with, you know, he sounds like he's in pretty good terms and friends with de Mohrenschildt. I believe he is some kind of German journalist or something like that. Let's see if we can pull up any information on this guy. Hold on one second. Alright, so this is William Altmans, and wow, was a Dutch investigative journalist and author, active in international politics due to the highly critical stance he often took towards Dutch foreign policy. As of 1956, the Dutch government conspired to keep him out of work. A lengthy lawsuit, 1991 to 2000, involved the royal family, led to the state having to pay him damages. Wow. So he was born in the Netherlands and died in the Netherlands. Wow, this is interesting. So you learn something new every damn day. Anyway, so we'll go into this guy tomorrow into more information. Let's get back to the video.
I have to admit that either he was much more intelligent than I was, or I was just impressed too much by the attitude of the whole situation and the people at the Warren Committee. And I really said some unkind things about Lee Harvey Oswald, which I regret I had said. And this is more or less the sequence of Mr. Jenner's attitude towards me when I sat there and answered his questions for 2.5 days. First, it was intimidation. He said to me, "I know more about you than you do yourself, so you answer the questions and don't say a single lie." He was very, very cool to me at first, and I answered the questions. Then he started flattering me, how great I was, what a cosmopolitan person I was, how many people I knew in this world. And probably the flattery worked on me and convinced me that he is a good friend of mine. So finally, at the end of the testimony, at the end of this long testimony, I think he was convinced that I was not in any way involved in the assassination, and gave me a lot of compliments, and we parted the best of friends. At the end of this testimony, I told the counsel of the harm this affair had done to me in Haiti, and he hurried to insert a statement that I was naturally above all suspicion. I said also, "I feel that having helped the Oswalds is considered by you as immoral." "Not at all," concluded Mr. Jenner. "You did all right. Keep living the life you led. It cannot hurt to help other people." Then there was half a more day, long day of testimony for my wife, at which both she and our dogs were present. The little two Manchesters were there at the Warren Committee report, not as material witnesses who had known and liked Harvey Lee Oswald, but because Jean refused to leave them alone in the hotel.
George, is this the moment you want Jan to...
Yes.
One more question I would like to ask you. Somewhere along the line, Lee Harvey Oswald asked you a pointed question like, okay, George, what is your political philosophy? And you gave a reply, I think, which Mr. Jenner of the Warren Commission amended with a remark of his. What was exactly that?
Well, I told him that I let my political philosophy is live and let live. Let people do they want.
You
they don't harm
that.
the others. And I think that, generally speaking, Mr. Jenner agreed with my point of view.
So I find it interesting that the Mornshield, professes this liaison-faire type of lifestyle and attitude that let people live and all this kind of stuff. But yet, he's hanging out with these right-wing, ultra-conservative community in Dallas, the right-wing anti-communist white Russians in Dallas. You don't see Mr. de Mornshield hanging out at the, socialist bookstore and coffee shop, like I said, reading Ginsburg and, attending Fair Play for Cuba committee meetings or anything like that, even though he's, professes to be liaison-faire. So, again, like I said, people hang out with people they agree with, okay? It's just like on Facebook, okay? But before Facebook and before Twitter, people would hang out in groups of people at the social club, the country clubs, the Adolphus Hotel, the golf clubs, with people they agree with, okay? Very rarely would anyone be hanging, you're not going to have General Walker hanging out with Gloria Steinem, okay, at some knitting group, okay? It's just not going to happen. So, I find it, like I said, the people you hang out with is just like the food you eat. You are what you eat. You are in your mind with the people you hang out with, okay? And associate with.
No. You told me something else. Lee Harvey Oswald asked you what is your political philosophy, and you gave an answer, and let them live and let live, and then Mr. Jenner said, made a comment.
I forgot, what was it?
Well, you made notes of it.
Yeah.
Well, we go over that later then at the interview. Just disregard this passage. I will keep reminding you of that. This is interesting. You are discussing Jenner now. Okay. Jan, now, what would be interesting is to get... No, I'll give you this one. What would be interesting is to get your view of going to Washington and visit with the Warren Commission on the Oswald assassination.
Number one, I want to go back a little to Port-au-Prince. When we received the letter and asking us, not requesting, asking us to appear if we can contribute anything to this horrible tragedy, we said we would like to say anything we can say of our knowledge of Oswald and his family. Unfortunately, we didn't see or didn't have any communications with them for 8 straight months prior to assassination, and we actually would be very poor help in solving that tragedy. We had no idea whether he became sane and wonderful man, or whether he became bad and became a criminal. The only way that we could contribute anything is to our communications with him prior of all of these things going back practically a year and a half. So when the news get around, which we never concealed that we had a request to go and testify, and we did agree, all American colony was in uproar in Port-au-Prince. Whenever we went to tennis, and after tennis we sat out, had the drinks, he always said, "How horrible, aren't you afraid?" I said, "Afraid? Afraid of what?" He said, "Aren't you afraid to go and testify? He is supposed to be an assassin." I said, "So what? What do we have to do, that he assassin or not? We just happen to know a man for the time quite far away back from what happened, and the only thing we can contribute is some to his personality and describe his character." They just couldn't believe it, and frankly, I had a feeling that many of them were afraid to such extent that they thought probably we'll be put in jail and never come back to Port-au-Prince. Well, we forgot all about that, and we were arriving to Washington, and we were asked to testify separately. My husband testified 2.5 days, and after that I had to testify for 1.5 days. And my reaction was a little bit different than his, because when I came, I didn't consider it interrogation or anything. I consider it as my favor to come and give my contribution to solving this horrible tragedy, if in any way I can help, which I doubted very much. So I had completely relaxed attitude, and any little detail, unfortunately I have pretty good memory, I was going to tell them if in any way that can contribute to the cause. To my surprise, they asked me, they were rather pleasant with me and a little bit reserved. All of a sudden, instead of asking me, when did and where about you meet him, how many times you saw him, what were your discussions, and what do you know, and what did you learn about him and his wife, instead of that, they all of a sudden asking me, where were you born? Who were your parents? I really objected immensely towards that, but they said they have to know the background of the witness in order to evaluate its statements. So I agree with that, never suspecting that my personal life will appear in Warren Report. I consented to testify and give them all the information pertaining Oswald, but I never did any consent to them to print my personal life, which I have nothing to be ashamed of, but this is my personal property. I can never forgive Warren Report for releasing that to public and all over the world. They had no business to print where I was from, what did I do, how many jobs I had, how many husbands I had, how many children I had. It's my personal property, and if I want it published, I will have it published myself or have authorization to somebody else. All my impression was, but I have to say, and which I should, all of my communications or any of my knowledge of his actions, of his personality, only Oswald, Lee Oswald, and nothing else. So I'm still carrying a very big grudge, and believe me, whenever I have a chance, I'm going to have them pay for what they've done, because to me it's a tremendous insult to a personal freedom which we're supposed to have in this country. That's why we are here and not in Soviet Union. And I respect personal freedom and personal property not to be touched by anyone unless consent of a person is given. Now,
I just wanted to say as a personal note here that, I mean, you can tell this woman's pretty high class, and, you know, probably one of these kinds of persons that's always insulted by every comment that anyone could ever make. And, you know, she talks about freedom, but she requires that people, you know, consent to her will the way she wants things to be. You know, I've been around people like this, and there's no pleasing them. There's no, everyone's always in an uproar trying to walk on eggshells to please, you know, women like this or men like this or whatever. And this is a form of control. It's psychological control, that you're always upset about something that the other person supposedly did. Okay? And this is just a form of mental manipulation and control. I've been around a lot of people like that. But and the easiest way to not be controlled by them is to not play their game. Refuse. And then, of course, you risk getting, you know, thrown out or whatever. But I do find it interesting how the same white Russian anti-communist right-wing groups almost pro-Nazi, that were involved in the assassination of Kennedy, okay, are the same groups that are around Trump now, or were around Trump, and the same groups that support Putin, okay? And then you have the same periphery of news media and social media guys that are against the war and, you know, against supporting Ukraine and support Putin no matter how awful and horrible the things that Putin does. So I do find it interesting how this same group is operating. You know, the children, grandchildren of this group are still operating out there with the same attitudes, you know, and of course now you see it all over the place. You know, any Democrat that doesn't agree with the right-wing agenda is instantly a socialist communist, okay? They're using the same psychological tactics to go after people, you know. I find it interesting that things don't change. It's the same group, the children, grandchildren of these people, and they're still got the same fucking agenda, okay? And I'm sure if they could have killed Biden or Obama, they would have done it long ago too, okay? And with Trump, you just have this useful idiot that, you know, is being controlled by Russia and controlled by Putin. So it's the same group of people from the same areas, you know, and there we go. Anyway, let's keep going.
Yes, well, so we start talking, and I tell them, of course, I have nothing to be ashamed of. I had, in fact, I'm quite proud, nothing sensational of my background. My father was a great man. My mother was a very nice woman. I had excellent childhood in China. I came to United States because I chose United States. I could have gone to Europe, but the freedom in United States and the Constitution that we had appealed to me, and I wanted a new world. I was brought up sort of in a European manner, and I was sort of tired of it. I want something new, and that's why I chose United States and came with the best belief that I'm going to have complete freedom of judgments, fate or no fate. It will be my personal business, and nobody is going to try to impose it upon me. Well, I found, к сожалению, to my regret, I found that it not always worked like that. Sometimes it did. But at any rate, after I gave them all of my background, we went to subject of my meeting, Lee Harvey, and of course, we never even discussed a testimony with my husband. He never read mine, I never read his. But it completely coincides 100% because whenever you say the truth, you don't have to remember. There was no problem with that. Then they finally, on about second day, they wanted me to identify the gun. So they brought the gun out, and my little dog was there, he sniffed in the gun. I said maybe he can know more about it because by smell he can say it's the same gun or not. But I cannot possibly say that was the same gun. It looked just about the same. The rifle, I mean, looked just about the same, but I never touched it, I never handled it, so I have no way. I said, why don't you ask his wife whether it's the same gun or not, because she probably dusted it. She probably handled it, so she can tell you much more in order to identify that it was the same gun.
And again, that brings up another obvious question. You know, if Marina is possibly dusting that gun, where are Marina's fingerprints on this rifle? Surely she went in and grabbed the rifle and pushed it into Oswald's face and said, why are you wasting money on this rifle and we can't even afford to eat or get baby clothes? Don't you think she would have done something like that? You know, Marina seemed to be pretty outspoken and wasn't really afraid to express herself, so she wasn't timid, you know what I'm saying? So it would have made sense that Marina would have grabbed that rifle out of that closet, gone into Oswald, maybe even pointed it at him and said, hey, you son of a bitch, if you keep hitting me, I'm going to take this rifle and blow your brains out one night while you're sleeping. Don't you think she would have done some shit like that? She seemed pretty fiery, you know. And when you listen to them speaking here, you're going to hear how fiery Marina is. She wasn't afraid of anything. Okay?
Did you feel in your testimony for the Bottom report that you defended Lee? Did you also have the feeling, like George had, that when they questioned you about Oswald, they did so as if they had already made up their minds that he was guilty? Did you feel you
there
had
you go.
Were you free to express your opinions as far as to bring also sympathetic angles of his character out, or knowing him?
Yes, they were not as strong as they were with my husband, but definitely there was an air that there were no way out.
How do you mean?
That he is supposed to be the assassin, and no matter what, that was the feeling we had. And they were not very happy with whatever good was ever said about him.
How did you notice that?
It's just...
There you go. Like I've said from the very beginning, you know, Oswald never had a day in court. This is a kangaroo court with no jury. Okay? The judges are the Warren Commission. There's no defense lawyer for Oswald. That's a pillar of our Constitution, is that someone accused of a crime has a right to face his accusers. Okay? But yet Oswald's dead. Can't even be representative by Mark Lane or any other lawyer to represent his side. So it's just a prosecutorial kangaroo court against Oswald, and anything that says anything positive about Oswald is downplayed, and the witnesses are shamed.
The feeling that was dislike in their faces when something nice was said about him. And frankly, we were very fortunate because we were interrogated much later than the other people. After they were interrogated immediately, and they were bewildered, they were frightened. When we faced Warren Committee, we were completely cool, and we were not excited, because in excitement people did say, and we know lots of our good friends said things that they didn't mean because they were too frightened, they were too excited or something. We spoke completely indifferent, just trying to bring facts of whatever we could recall of our relationship to Oswald. But definitely I had a feeling that whenever anything kind was said about Oswald, they were sort of displeased. It was not completely said in so many words, but the feeling were not, how to say it? They sort of didn't agree, but they didn't say so. Because all they wanted to know and to hear what we have to say about the subject. Frankly, the whole thing, calling us to Warren Report, spending all the money, and bringing us in, and taking us back, and dragging our little mutts, the little doggies there. And I'm sure they did quite a lot of research, FBI, CIA, and whatever else they have. All of that money were completely wasted. I told them so. Why don't they go to New Orleans? Why didn't they find out who were his acquaintances? And what was he up to in the last few months prior to this tragedy?
Bam! The lady's got common sense, right? Right there. She just stated it. Why didn't they go to New Orleans? They never even came close to New Orleans, the Warren Commission. Even she knows.
Instead of covering all it up and spending all the money of digging in the backgrounds, for instance, like ours, or the backgrounds of anybody that came in contact with him in Dallas. This is so far removed, was complete waste of time. I had sort of a feeling that they just wanted to fill in the pages with some kind of nonsense, instead of actually digging in and find out.
Dental records.
We even had a fight. I had a personal fight with Jacqueline's mother in her house. Okay? Because I did believe, and I wanted one thing in the world, I wanted to know what rat did it, and I'm insulting the rat when I say that. who could possibly commit such crime?
Yep.
This was the president for the first time in a long time. Was a young president. Complete.
So again, okay, like I've said about compartmentalization, okay, Des Moines was part of this right-wing conservative, petroleum guy's world and the CIA, and he was used, okay, by the CIA or right-wing members of the CIA to watch Oswald and, to report back on Oswald. And then, like I said, they had many other candidates involved in other cities to possibly assassinate Kennedy, okay? Because after Kennedy refused to go into Cuba after the Cuban Missile Crisis, I believe that's when the majority of the military, the CIA, and the other people got involved. Because let's not forget, a year and a half before, there was the Bay of Pigs. They tried to snooker Kennedy right after he became president into sending an air support to support the Bay of Pigs invasion. And then that created a lot of resentment amongst the Cubans, the anti-Castro Cubans in the CIA, but not enough with the other ones. Okay, and so then you have the military wanted to go into Cuba, wipe out, invade Cuba, wipe out the missiles there, take on the Russians, and possibly even start World War III, because supposedly we were ahead of the Russians, okay, and our missiles and stuff. And that's when I believe the rest of the groups started to turn against Kennedy. And so that's when the Morn Show gets involved. He's helping him get that job at Jaeger Child's, photography right around the same time as the Cuban Missile Crisis. Okay. And so that's why I believe Des Moines Show killed himself, because he realized he had been used by these groups, the right-wing groups in the CIA and the oil industry, and that you can hear in his interview right here, even his wife, the remorse about how they didn't think Oswald was guilty, that the Warren Commission didn't want to look at other people, and she couldn't understand that. You can hear it right here in her voice.
He's not interested in any material possessions because he had them all, with the bright, brilliant ideas, and going forward. He was the hope, not only our country, but the hope of the world.
I think we have covered a great deal of your impressions of the war.
May I add now?
It's a good moment to let the judge get back to his script.
Now I remember a few details about the interrogation, and of course it covers so many pages that it's so hard to remember what it actually said. But it's there for anybody to see. For instance, Consul Jenner asked me why Lee liked you so much, and he liked only you. Why didn't he like the other people? Well, I said I didn't have the slightest idea. So Jenner suggested that maybe because I was a strong person. Well, that was very hard for me to say whether I was a strong person or not. I answered this, maybe he identified me as some sort of an internationalist, an American internationalist. And Jenner said, maybe you are. You and your wife, said Jenner, were the only ones who remained Lee and Marina's friends. Well, I said, we are not defending ourselves for having seen and helped them. To us, Lee was always hospitable, and he was very responsive to our kindness. Then, at the end of the testimony, Mr. Jenner brought out the letter which I wrote to Mrs. Hugh Auchincloss, the mother of Jacqueline Kennedy. And I quote what I wrote to her. Since we lived in Dallas permanently, last year and before, we had the misfortune to have met Oswald, and especially his wife Marina. And I continued, the possible reason and I do hope, I continue, that Marina and her children, I understand she has two now, will not suffer too badly throughout their lives and that the stigma of assassination will not affect the innocent children, innocent children.
Alright, so we're going to stop right there, and we'll pick this up tomorrow. Again, I think I'm just going to keep going on with these there's 3 tracks here. So we'll do the timeline, we'll do some background more on Morris Shield and his associates, and then we'll listen to Morris Shield, because I really think this is really critical. Besides, everybody knows what happened in the timeline, and they know a little bit about the Morris Shield, but now you're hearing it straight from the horse's mouth, from the Morris Shield, exactly what his feelings were and his wife's feelings were about Oswald. And it's fascinating. It gives you a completely different perspective, you know, about Oswald. And it's even changing my perspective a little bit from, you know, when I first started off that Oswald was a paid informant or whatever for the Department of Justice or the FBI, to, you know, Oswald was maybe working little part-time jobs and assignments with this right-wing group, to maybe Oswald is exactly what Des Moines Shield says he was. He was this confused, you know, left-wing, Marxist-leaning guy that was trying to find paradise, and he went to the Soviet Union thinking it might be there, and we found it wasn't there. He came back, and now he's dissatisfied, and maybe he's thinking Cuba might be the deal. And then, because of Des Moines Shield's association with him and the other groups, okay, the right wing targeted Oswald to make him the patsy. Okay, that's kind of my leaning now, but it could change. Who knows? But anyway, so we'll keep going on this track and see where we end up. All right, take care.